Okay, well today we're going to look at how to measure angles, and then toward the end we're going to talk about how do we draw certain angles. So this is really a supplemental video. We are skipping these lessons because we are not in school, and so any of this is really optional. But I find that it is very valuable at the same time. So we want to talk about what you see before you here, and that is a protractor. And what we notice about the protractor is that it has two sets of numbers on it, all the way up. It doesn't have two sets of numbers here at the 90, but every other place it has two sets of numbers. And the other thing is, this is the one that I printed off that is on the optional, it's the printable protractor from the chart on canvas. And the neat thing is it comes with two. So when you put two of them together, you notice that we get a whole circle, because really an angle is part of a circle. And so we want to review our angles. And we know that there are acute angles, which are small angles. We have 90-degree angles, and that shadow is really messing with me right now. Here we go, that's better. So we have acute angles, and then we have right angles that make 90 degrees. And if we keep going, we have obtuse angles. And then if we come straight across, we have our straight angles. And so we're going to be talking about what the background knowledge of that is really important, because when we're measuring, that's the first thing we're going to ask ourselves. So what does the angle look like? Does it look like an acute angle? Does it look like a right angle? Does it look like an obtuse angle? Because having that knowledge will help us read our protractor. So one of the first things that we want to do, I have a different one here. This is a typical one that you will find. And you notice that there is a front side and a back side to it. And you want to be able to read the numbers here. Because if I'm measuring and it's backwards, I'm going to probably make a mistake in my angle measurement. So making sure that I have the right side up when I place it on angles is going to be very, very important so that I can read it. So I have in our Module 4 book, even though we're not going to be using this, I have, this is on Lesson 6, and it's page 41. So if you have your books, or if you want to follow along, you could always get your book and follow along with me. One of the first things we're going to do is we take our protractor here, and you see right here where that perpendicular lines are. We are going to place the vertex of this angle right here, right in the center. And it's important that we don't use the bottom of the protractor right here, but we're using right there where it meets. So I'm going to go ahead and place this down. And well, actually, before I begin, we talked about, we want to say, well, what type of angle do you think this is? And I'm thinking that kind of looks like an acute angle. Hopefully from our review last week, we know it's an acute angle. And we know that it is going to be less than 90 degrees. So that's important, because when we start reading our numbers on here, knowing where the numbers fall is going to be really important. So now let me go ahead and place this back on here. And you notice that I have the vertex lined up here, and this ray of the angle is lined up along that other bottom of the protractor here. Get it back there. All right. So because this ray I'm going to say it starts at 0 here. So I can imagine that this angle, if I use this other straight edge here, and this were the other ray, it sort of opened up something like this. And so there it is, it's open to right there. So right here would be 0, and we're going to open up. So that's important because that will help us determine which scale we want to use. But the other thing is that because it has those double sets of numbers, and we've already identified this as an acute angle that's less than 90 degrees, you see this other ray passes through the numbers 120 and 60. And I'm thinking to myself, hopefully, if I know this is an acute angle and it's less than 90, well, I know that 120 is more than 90. So I want to choose a 60. So that would make this a 60-degree angle because it's opened up 60 degrees from 0 all the way to 60 degrees. And you can see they have the arc in there. I just wrote in another one. So when we come to a different type, if we look at the bottom of the page, we have the letter E here, this angle E. And again, looking at the way this angle is laid out, I know that from my review last week, this is going to be an obtuse angle. And obtuse angles are between 90 and 180 degrees. Somewhere between 90 and 180 degrees. It's not going to be exactly 90 because that would make it a right angle. And it's not going to be exactly 180 because that would make it a straight angle. So obtuse angles, again, between 90 and 180. So again, I'm going to take my protractor. I'm going to place the vertex of the angle right here in the crosshairs of my protractor. I'm going to line up 1. Now that brings up an important point. Why do they have 2 sets of numbers? And it's because I can measure it from this way, or I could have lined it up on this side as well. So I could have the 0 here. So typically, because I'm right-handed, I tend to measure from the right. So I can see that I have my vertex lined up, I have a ray lined up with the protractor, and I am just going to follow that around until I come to the second ray right here. And I have choices of 50 or 130. 50 or 130. And again, I've already determined that this is somewhere between 90 and 180. So obtuse angles would be, the 50 would not make sense for this one, but the 130 degrees would make sense because that would be an obtuse angle. So obtuse angle, this one measures 130 degrees. And as I said, I could measure it using the other side too. If I went 0 here, this time I'm just really going to be using the outside set of numbers. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And if I follow that around, I'm going to come, and look right there, there's 130 and 50. Those are my 2 choices again. Same thing, I know it's obtuse, so 130 would be the number, the number of degrees that would make sense for this angle because it's an obtuse angle. So it's a little bit about measuring angles. And if I flip the page here, we have, here's another one. But this time I have a problem. Does anybody see what my problem is? The problem is these rays, they don't make it all the way to the number. So it's hard to tell here. So we're going to remedy that. We're going to take our protractor and we're going to extend the lines or the rays. So I can extend this ray outward, and I can also extend this second ray outward. So I have just increased the ray's length, and we know that they do go on forever because that's the definition that we talked about last week. They have a beginning point and they go on forever in one direction. So I have two different rays that make an angle. And now if I go ahead and put my protractor here, I've lined up the vertex. I have the ray lined up along this bottom line, and I follow up here. Now this is important because I see that this line is between 30 and 40. So I can say to myself, well, I've gone, so if I start at 0, again, back up, looking at the angle, it looks like an acute angle, which I know is less than 90 degrees. So that's important to write that down, because once I put my protractor on, I want to be able to confirm that this angle is between 0 and 90 degrees, or less than 90 degrees. So I have the one ray lined up, I have the vertex lined up, and I'm just looking at finding the second ray, and I see that it's somewhere between 30 and 40. And if you look at all these little marks up here, if you were to count them, there would be 10 spaces, or 9 marks really. 10 spaces, that's what we're looking for. And so between 30 and 40, there's a mark that appears to be halfway. Now I'm a little bit past that, so that halfway point would be 35, and it looks like I am 1, maybe 2 marks past. I'm going to go with the 1 mark right now. So I would say if this is 35, my angle measures 36 degrees. So this angle measures 36 degrees. Now, if we look at a different one, we move down here. This one is the letter D in the book, and this is on page 43. I noticed that, boy, this one kind of looks like a right angle to me. And sometimes that's important, is if you move your paper or move the angle, you can always manipulate the angle to make it a better view. So if I turn it, it looks like a right angle, and I know that from our review of angles that right angles measure 90 degrees. So I think that's my angle, but I'm going to confirm that. And again, looking at the rays, I can barely see them on here, so I am going to extend them, line them up, and extend it out, and do the same to the second ray. Extend that out. And then I can go ahead and place my protractor. My vertex is here. I have a ray that is lined up, and find the second ray, and look, it is lined up exactly at that 90 degrees. So it would be 90 degrees whether I measured it from the left or whether I measured it from the right. So there's only one number at the 90. So I can confirm that this is a 90-degree angle. And I did put a square corner in there to mark it as such. So that's a little bit about measuring angles. There is another one here, letter C. There's a couple others here on page 43. And then there's some more on the back side. There we go, that's better. On the back side of this page. On page 44, there's several. And in fact, I do want to do one of these. So let's go ahead and do this letter G right here. I'm going to zoom in here to that angle. And again, it looks like an obtuse angle, so I'm going to mark it as such. But I need to find the measurement. And again, I need to extend my rays. So I'm going to line my protractor up at the bottom, my straight edge, I should say. Extend that one. I'm going to go ahead and extend this ray out. And now I can go ahead and put my protractor on here, make sure the numbers are legible so that I know I'm on the right side here. And line the vertex up. I've got one ray lined up along the bottom row here, and I am going to go around and find the second ray, which I see right here poking past the protractor. And I notice it looks like between 20 and 30, but I just said this is an obtuse angle, and I know obtuse angles are between 90 and 180. So between 20 and 30 would not make sense. So the other choices I have are between 150 and 160. And this is where we want to make sure that we are understanding we're using, in this case, the bottom set of numbers. If the 0 is here, we're going 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way around to the 150. And oftentimes I will see students say, oh, this angle is 165 degrees. And that is incorrect, because 165 would be between 160 and 170, and this ray is between 150 and 160. So it's always important to see which direction we're coming from. I know normally we count from left to right, but in this case, this scale is going from the right to the left. So 150, and if I were to count 151, 152, 153, 154, 155 is right halfway between 150 and 160. So I would say that this angle is 155 degrees. All right. So we've done an acute angle, we've done a right angle, and now we have an obtuse angle. Okay. The other thing that we want to do is, what if you were given, if I were to ask you to draw an angle, let's look at this one right here. The directions here said to construct angles that measure the given number of degrees. And in this case, you'll notice that we have a ray that's already been drawn for us. And that's really the starting point, is you can start with any line that you want, but because we're going 65 degrees, again, I'm going to line up the ray and the end point right here at the vertex of my protractor, and I'm going to count to 65 degrees. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and I'm going to go to 65 right here. And I'm just going to make a little mark outside of my protractor at 65 degrees. So I'm between 60 and 70. Right there is my mark at 65 degrees. So at this point, I can go ahead and take away my protractor. And now it's just a matter of connecting the dots. Remember, we are measuring from we want our vertexes to meet, so we're using the vertex or the end point of this ray, which will be the beginning of this ray. So I could just take a straight edge, I have a ruler here, or I could have used the straight edge of my protractor, it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to line those two dots up and draw my ray in. And I'm going to go ahead and put an arrow on it. I'm going to put an arc in it because, as we said earlier, that arc really is saying that it is part of a circle. Because if I were to extend this going all the way around, you can see I have the circle here. But we're just putting the arc on the inside. So now I have a 65-degree angle. Now that's when they give me a ray to start with. What if I didn't have anything to start with? Let's do this 132 degrees. 132 degrees right here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line, and I'm going to put a vertex or an endpoint on it. And I think I'm going to call this sorry about that. I'm going to call this the endpoint over here. I'm going to switch ends on this. So now I'm going to line up my protractor with a vertex. I have my ray is lined up, and I need to measure 132 degrees. So if I'm starting at 0, I'm going to open this ray up, open this angle up to 132 degrees. Now I might think that 132 degrees is right here, but if I were to make a ray from here to where I thought 132 is, that would be, it looks like an acute angle, and that would not be correct. I want to keep going. So I'm going to use this 130 over here, and because I'm going from right to left, I have 130, I'm going to go 2 marks past the 130 mark. And now I can go ahead and remove my protractor, and I can use my straight edge to connect my points and put my arrow on it and put my arc on it. And so now, yes, that looks like an obtuse angle. So that is a little bit about measuring angles and drawing angles. And hopefully if you haven't had a chance, there's a game that you're going to play, Alien Angles, where you have to they give you one ray and you're going to try to open that to a given amount of degrees, and they will give you a leeway of a few degrees if you're in the neighborhood. So I encourage you to, if you have a protractor, then go ahead and practice with a protractor. If not, you can print one of these. You can still use this one. Of course, you're going to have to make sure that your rays are way on the outside. So I could, in fact, measure using this protractor, but I'm going to make sure that this is my center right here. So if I were to line up right there, make sure that my ray is lined up here. And if I wanted to make a 45-degree angle, I'm going to go to 40, between 40 and 50, put a mark at 45, and then I can go ahead and remove that. Now, because this is paper, I'm going to get something a little more sturdy to draw my ray. Line up the points and put my arc in. And so we just created a 45-degree angle with our paper template. And I could measure the same angle as well. And so we can see that, yeah, that ray does come past the 140. See how easy it is to make a mistake right there? Almost at 145 degrees. 45 degrees, between 40 and 50. So if I make mistakes, think about that. You got to be really, really careful. Okay, and this is an acute angle. All right, so again, if you have any questions or issues with the protractor, and again, if you don't have a protractor, it's not a big deal. It's just this is really supplemental. So, all right, have a great day.